At 23, Elara Wren had learned that poverty was easier to endure than humiliation. She could survive long days in the fields, cracked hands, thin meals, and the constant worry of her grandmother's failing health. What she could not accept was cruelty disguised as authority. That was why she stood in the middle of her family's muddy yard, staring down her Uncle Bram as he waved a stack of papers in her face. "You have 3 days," he snarled. "After that, the house is mine." Elara's fingers tightened around the wooden handle of her basket. "You said the debt was yours." "It was." "Then why is my grandmother's home listed as collateral?" Bram's expression hardened. Elara already knew the answer. He had lied. 4 years, he had borrowed money against the property, promising to repay it. Now, with the debt collectors closing in, he intended to sacrifice the only home Elara and her grandmother had left. "You think your little vegetables and honey will save you?" Bram sneered. "You're a nobody." Elara stepped closer. "Maybe. But I'm a nobody who can read." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Before he could answer, the roar of an approaching engine interrupted them. A black SUV stopped beside the farmhouse. A tall man stepped out. Cashin Vale. Even in Willowmere, everyone knew his name. He was the ruthless billionaire CEO who had built a medical technology empire before 35. He was also notorious for his obsession with cleanliness. He never shook hands, avoided public crowds, wore gloves whenever possible, and reportedly carried enough disinfectant to sterilize a small office. Cashin had come to Willowmere to inspect land his company intended to purchase. He had not expected to find himself standing in a muddy farmyard with a family dispute unfolding before him. Then his polished shoe sank into the mud. Cashin stared down. His face went blank. Elara nearly laughed. "Don't," he warned. "I didn't say anything." "You're about to." She smiled. Cashin looked at the mud as if it had personally betrayed him. "Can someone get me out?" Elara set down her basket. "You've got 3 bodyguards. They're useless." The guards exchanged embarrassed glances. Elara stepped into the mud. Cashin's eyes widened. "Wait." She grabbed his arm. "Don't touch me." "Then stop standing there." "I mean don't." Elara pulled. Cashin stumbled forward, straight into her. For one stunned second, they stood chest to chest. Elara smelled rain and pine. Cashin smelled disinfectant. Then he looked down at her muddy hand gripping his expensive coat. His expression became one of pure horror. Elara released him. "There. You're free." Cashin stared at the mud on his coat. Then at her. "You touched me." Elara raised an eyebrow. "You survived." Something unfamiliar crossed his face. Anger, perhaps. Or disbelief. No one spoke to Cashin Vale like that. No one laughed at him. And certainly no one touched him with muddy hands. Yet, as Elara returned to her basket, Cashin found himself watching her instead of the stain on his coat. Bram suddenly stepped forward. "This has nothing to do with you." Cashin turned. "Actually, it might." His gaze fell upon the papers in Bram's hand. "What's that?" Bram quickly folded them. "Private business." Cashin held out his hand. "Let me see." Bram refused. Elara looked between them. Cashin's expression changed. The playful irritation vanished, replaced by the cold authority that had made powerful executives fear him. "Give me the papers." Bram hesitated. Then Cashin's phone rang. He answered. Within seconds, his legal team began explaining the property records. Cashin listened. His eyes moved toward Elara, then toward Bram. When the call ended, his voice was dangerously calm. "Interesting." Elara frowned. "What?" Cashin handed her the papers. "The debt is real." Her stomach dropped. "But the property transfer isn't." Bram went pale. Cashin looked directly at him. "Your signature is forged." Silence fell across the yard. Elara's heart pounded. Bram took a step backward. Cashin stepped forward. "You have 3 days," he said quietly. "Not to take her home." His gaze hardened. "To explain yourself before the authorities do it for you." Ilara stared at the billionaire who had arrived as a stranger and somehow become the first person to stand between her family and disaster. Cashin turned to leave. Then he stopped. He glanced at his muddy coat. "Tomorrow," he said, looking at Ilara, "you are going to explain exactly how you managed to ruin a $3,000 suit." Ilara smiled. "Come back tomorrow, and I'll show you the mud." For the first time, Cashin Vale smiled back. And neither of them yet understood that the death threatening Ilara's home was only the beginning of a battle that would pull them into each other's lives, and eventually force the world's most guarded man to choose between controlling everything and risking his heart for the one woman he could never control. The next morning, Cashin Vale returned to Willowmere, exactly as Ilara had expected, and precisely when she had hoped he wouldn't. His black SUV stopped outside the farmhouse, spotless despite the muddy road. Cashin emerged wearing another immaculate suit, his expression severe as he surveyed the puddles surrounding him. Ilara leaned against the porch railing. "New suit." Cashin glanced at her. "Yes. Planning to ruin this one too?" His eyes narrowed. "That's why I brought you something." He held out a sealed envelope. Ilara opened it and found copies of the property records, along with evidence that Bram had forged her grandmother's signature. Cashin's legal team had traced the fraud overnight. Ilara stared at the documents. "You actually investigated this." "I said I would." "You didn't have to." Cashin's gaze settled on her. "I know." That simple answer unsettled her more than arrogance would have. Before Ilara could respond, Bram stormed out of the farmhouse. "You have no right to interfere." Cashin turned toward him. "I have every right when your interference involves fraud." Bram lunged for the papers. Ilara stepped back, but Cashin moved faster. He caught Bram's wrist and shoved him away. "Don't touch her." The words were quiet, but the warning behind them was unmistakable. Bram glared at Ilara. "You think this rich man is going to save you forever?" Ilara's courage faltered. Cashin noticed. He stepped between them. "No," he said. "She'll save herself." Ilara looked at him in surprise. Cashin handed the documents back to her. "I'm only making sure she gets the chance." Bram left in a fury, but the damage was already done. By evening, Ilara's grandmother had suffered another health crisis. The village doctor warned that she needed specialized treatment immediately. Ilara sat beside the old woman's bed, holding her trembling hand. "I'll find a way," she whispered. Cashin stood silently in the doorway. Ilara looked up. "You heard." "Yes." "I'm not asking you for money." "I didn't offer any." She frowned. Cashin walked inside. "My company operates a private medical center in the city." "I can't afford it." "Then don't." Ilara stared at him. Cashin seemed almost irritated by her resistance. "Your grandmother needs treatment. My facility has the specialists she needs. That's the situation. And what do you want in return?" "Nothing." "Nobody does something for nothing." Cashin's expression hardened. "Perhaps that's your problem." Ilara stiffened. He immediately regretted the words. His voice softened. "You're used to people taking from you. I'm not asking for anything." She looked away. Cashin had no idea why her silence bothered him so much. He was accustomed to controlling negotiations, ending arguments, and walking away from people who complicated his life. Ilara complicated everything. She challenged him. She mocked him. She refused his help. And somehow, he wanted to help her even more. By sunset, Cashin had arranged an ambulance and specialists for her grandmother. Ilara stood outside the farmhouse as the vehicle departed. "Thank you," she said quietly. Cashin nodded. Then she noticed the mud on his shoes. "You stepped off the road." "I had to." "Why?" Cashin looked toward the departing ambulance. "Because you were standing there alone." Ilara's breath caught. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Cashin's phone rang. His expression changed as he listened. When he ended the call, his face was grim. "What happened?" Ilara asked. "The hospital has no room tonight." Her heart sank. Cashin looked at her. "There's another option." Ilara immediately shook her head. "No. You don't even know what it is." "I know that look." "What look?" "The one rich people get when they're about to solve my problems without asking." Cashin almost smiled. "Then you're learning quickly." He opened the SUV door. "Come with me." "Where?" "My home." Ilara stared at him. Cashin immediately regretted how that sounded. "Your grandmother can receive treatment there until a hospital bed is available." Ilara glanced at the ambulance disappearing down the road. She knew she had no better option. Still, the thought of entering Cashin Vale's world frightened her more than she wanted to admit. "Your house. My estate. How big is it?" "Large." "How large?" Cashin paused. "Large enough." Ilara sighed. "This is going to be a disaster." Cashin looked at her muddy boots. "On that, we agree." She climbed into the SUV. Cashin followed, keeping a careful distance between them. But as the vehicle left Willowmere, neither noticed the dark sedan parked beyond the trees. Inside, a man watched them disappear. Dorian Rusk lowered his binoculars. Cashin had no idea that the woman he was taking home had just become the easiest way to destroy him. And Ilara had no idea that the journey to Cashin's mansion would change far more than her circumstances. It would change the man beside her. Cashin's estate stood beyond the city, hidden behind iron gates and towering cypress trees. Ilara had expected wealth, but she had not expected something so vast that the driveway seemed longer than her entire village. The moment the SUV stopped, a team of staff rushed forward. Cashin immediately raised a hand. "Stop." Everyone froze. "Where are your shoes?" Ilara looked down at her muddy boots. Cashin closed his eyes. She smiled. "You invited me. I invited your grandmother. Then you should have specified." His jaw tightened. Before he could respond, Ilara's grandmother was carefully taken inside. Doctors were already waiting, and within minutes, she was receiving the treatment she desperately needed. Ilara stood in the enormous foyer, overwhelmed by polished marble, silent corridors, and furniture that looked too expensive to touch. Cashin watched her carefully. "You can stay here." "Here?" "Yes." "Where?" He gestured toward the mansion. "Anywhere." Ilara stared at him. "That isn't helpful." Cashin sighed. "There's a guest suite." "Does it have a kitchen?" "Why?" "Because I cook. We have chefs." "I didn't ask for chefs." Cashin looked genuinely confused. "You can have anything you want." Ilara studied him. "That's the problem with rich people." His eyebrows lifted. "You've known me for 2 days. And you've already proved my point." For once, Cashin had no answer. The following morning, Ilara discovered the mansion staff had prepared an elaborate breakfast. She stared at the delicate pastries. "Where's the porridge?" The head chef looked horrified. Cashin appeared behind her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Then why aren't you eating?" "I'm not hungry." Cashin glanced at the untouched food. "You're lying." Ilara folded her arms. "I want eggs." The chef immediately hurried away. "And toast." Cashin frowned. "Anything else?" "Tea." "Fine. Not that fancy kind." His expression darkened. "What does that mean?" "The kind that tastes like grass." Cashin stared at her. Ilara smiled. "You're learning." For the next few days, their strange arrangement became a battle of wills. Cashin insisted on disinfecting every surface Ilara touched. Ilara deliberately touched another. He refused to sit beside her after she returned from the garden. She dragged a muddy chair next to his. He told her she couldn't bring soil indoors. She planted herbs on his windowsill. Yet beneath the arguments, something unexpected began to grow. Cashin started eating meals in the kitchen instead of his private dining room. He listened when Alara spoke about her grandmother. He learned which flowers she liked. And one evening, Alara found him standing in the garden, staring at the small patch of herbs she had planted. "You didn't kill them," she said. Cashin glanced over. "I considered it. But you didn't." "No." "Why?" He looked at her. "I don't know." Alara smiled. Neither did he. Then the atmosphere changed. A crash echoed from the mansion. Alara turned toward the sound. Cashin moved instantly. "Stay here." "Why?" "Because I said so." Alara followed him anyway. They found a shattered window in the west corridor. Cashin's security team rushed in. A stone lay on the floor. Attached to it was a note. Cashin picked it up. His face hardened as he read. Alara stepped closer. "What does it say?" Cashin didn't answer. She took the note from his hand. 3 words were written across it. "She will pay." Ilara's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" Cashin's expression became frighteningly calm. "Dorian Rusk." Alara remembered the name. Cashin's greatest business rival. "What does he want?" Cashin looked at her. "Me." "Then why threaten me?" His silence answered her. Alara understood. She was Cashin's weakness. That realization frightened her. But something else frightened Cashin even more. He had spent years protecting his company, his fortune, and his reputation. Now, for the first time, there was someone he couldn't bear to lose. That night, Cashin moved Alara's room closer to his own. She discovered the change immediately. "You did this?" "Yes." "Without asking me?" "Yes." Alara glared at him. "You're impossible." "So I've been told." She turned to leave. Cashin caught her wrist. The contact lasted only a second. He released her immediately. His face changed. Alara looked down at his hand. Then at him. "Cashin." He seemed almost startled by his own reaction. "Go to your room." "You're afraid." His eyes narrowed. "Of what?" "Of caring." The words struck deeper than she intended. Cashin looked away. Alara softened. "You don't have to be." He finally met her gaze. "That's easy for you to say." "Why?" "Because you've never had anything worth losing." Ilara's expression changed. She stepped closer. "You're wrong." For the first time, Cashin looked vulnerable. Alara gently touched his hand. "You have something worth losing now." Neither moved. Then Cashin leaned toward her. Their lips were inches apart when a security alarm suddenly screamed through the mansion. Cashin pulled away. His entire demeanor transformed. A guard's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, the west gate has been breached." Cashin grabbed Ilara's hand. "Stay with me." They rushed toward the security room. The cameras showed an empty road. Then one screen flickered. A black vehicle appeared. It was the same car Alara had seen before leaving Willowmere. Cashin stared at it. Ilara's heart began pounding. "That's the car." Cashin turned. "What car?" "The one that followed me." His face went pale. Before he could respond, every light in the mansion went out. The estate plunged into darkness. And somewhere beyond the locked gates, a vehicle engine roared to life. Cashin tightened his grip around Ilara's hand. This time, he wasn't afraid of germs. He was afraid that someone had finally found the one person he could not live without. The mansion remained dark. For 3 terrifying seconds, Alara heard nothing except her own breathing and the distant pounding of rain against the windows. Then Cashin pulled her behind him. "Stay close." A sharp crash came from downstairs. Alara gripped his sleeve. "Someone is inside." "I know." Cashin reached for his phone, but the signal was dead. Another crash followed. This time, Ilara recognized the sound. Glass. Cashin's security team moved through the corridors, but the intruder seemed to know exactly where the cameras were positioned. One by one, the monitors went black. Then a man's voice echoed through the darkness. Veil. Cashin stiffened. Dorian. Come out, the voice called. Or the girl pays for your mistakes. Ilara felt Cashin's hand close around hers. I'll handle this. No. He looked at her. Ilara's voice trembled, but she refused to retreat. If he's here because of you, then I'm already involved. Cashin stared at her. 4 years, he had protected himself by controlling every variable. Yet Ilara had walked into his life and destroyed that illusion simply by refusing to be controlled. A gunshot shattered the silence. Ilara flinched. Cashin immediately pulled her into his arms. Are you hurt? She shook her head. He held her tighter. Then another shot rang out. Cashin pushed her toward a concealed passage behind the library wall. Go. I'm not leaving you. Ilara. His voice broke through her resistance. Please. She had never heard him say that word. Before she could move, a figure appeared at the end of the corridor. Cashin stepped in front of her. Dorian emerged from the shadows with 2 armed men. You've always had everything, Dorian said bitterly. Money, power, influence. Cashin's expression remained cold. And yet you're the one breaking into my home. Dorian laughed. Your home. His gaze shifted toward Ilara. No. This is your weakness. Ilara stepped forward. Cashin immediately stopped her. Dorian smiled. There it is. He had seen exactly what he wanted. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Dorian ordered his men forward. Cashin fought back, but the mansion's darkness worked against him. A violent struggle erupted, and Ilara was dragged away. Cashin. He turned just in time to see her disappear through the rear entrance. Something inside him shattered. He ran after her. Outside, rain poured across the grounds. A black vehicle sped toward the gates with Ilara trapped inside. Cashin's security team arrived seconds later, but the car had vanished. For the first time in his life, Cashin felt completely powerless. Then he noticed something on the wet ground. Ilara's scarf. He picked it up. His hands trembled. Hours later, the police had found no trace of her. Cashin refused to sleep. He sat alone in the security room, replaying every camera recording until he noticed something strange. The black vehicle had not escaped toward the highway. It had turned toward the old mountain road. Cashin suddenly remembered the property. The abandoned land near Willowmere. Dorian had been watching Ilara long before the attack. Cashin stood. Get the helicopter. His head of security hesitated. Sir, the storm is getting worse. Cashin looked at him. Then fly faster. Meanwhile, Ilara was locked inside an abandoned mountain warehouse. Dorian wanted her to call Cashin and convince him to surrender control of his company. But Ilara refused. You don't know him. Dorian laughed. I know exactly who he is. No. Ilara stared at him. You know the CEO. Her voice hardened. I know the man. Dorian's smile faded. Ilara had discovered something Cashin himself had not yet understood. His greatest strength wasn't his money. It was the people who loved him. And Cashin had finally allowed himself to be loved. When Dorian left the room, Ilara noticed a loose metal bar beside the broken window. She worked quietly, slowly, patiently. The moment she freed herself, she ran. Outside, the storm had transformed the mountain road into a river of mud. Ilara slipped and fell. Then headlights appeared. A vehicle stopped. Cashin stepped out. He was soaked, covered in mud, and bleeding from his forehead. Ilara stared at him. You came. Cashin crossed the distance between them. I told you to stay close. She laughed through her tears. You lost me. I know. Then he pulled her into his arms. Ilara buried her face against his chest. For once, Cashin didn't care about the mud. He didn't care about the rain. He didn't care about anything except the fact that she was alive. Dorian was arrested before dawn. The evidence against him was overwhelming. But the rescue changed Cashin more than the victory ever could. Days later, Ilara prepared to return to Willowmere. She stood in the mansion foyer with her suitcase. Cashin watched her. "You're leaving." "My grandmother is recovering." "I know. And my farm needs me." "I know." She smiled sadly. Cashin looked toward the doors. Then back at her. "Do you want to go?" Ilara hesitated. "Yes." His heart sank. Then she continued. "But I want you to come with me." Cashin stared. "To Willowmere?" "Yes." "Why?" Ilara smiled. "Because you keep calling this place your home." She stepped closer. "But I think you've been wrong." Cashin frowned. "Then what is my home?" Ilara took his hand. "Wherever you finally stop being afraid." For once, Cashin had no clever answer. He simply held her hand. And together, they left the mansion. But neither knew that waiting for them in Willowmere was a discovery that would change their future forever. A secret hidden inside Ilara's grandmother's old farmhouse that would reveal their families had been connected long before either of them had ever heard the other's name.